Imagine being told you're not welcome in first class, and then buying the whole airline. The terminal buzzed with the familiar rhythm of rolling suitcases and distant boarding calls, a chorus of modern travel. Inside Gate 43 of the bustling LAX International Terminal, a small line had already formed for FalconAir Flight 276, nonstop to New York. Among the crowd, dressed in a simple black hoodie, dark joggers, and a baseball cap pulled low, walked Tiger Woods. No entourage, no flash. Just a man with a backpack slung casually over his shoulder and a boarding pass on his phone. He stepped up to the first-class counter, scanning his pass. The gate agent, a woman with a perfectly pressed uniform and a clipboard in hand, barely glanced up. But when her eyes did lift, they lingered, then narrowed. She studied his face, then his clothes, then his face again. "Sir, this line is for first-class passengers only," she said, her voice flat and rehearsed. Tiger smiled politely. "That's me." She frowned, taking the phone from his hand and examining the screen. Her brow furrowed. "This can't be right." She tapped the screen twice, then held it up to the light as if the boarding pass might be counterfeit. "Do you have another form of ID?" Without hesitation, Tiger pulled out his wallet, handing over his driver's license. She took it, examined the name, Eldrick T. Woods, then looked back at him. "Oh," she said after a pause. Her tone didn't soften. "One moment." She stepped aside, whispering to another attendant. They both looked over at him, one of them half laughing under her breath. Tiger could hear the words even through the white noise of the terminal. "He thinks he's first class?" He remained calm, his posture relaxed, but his eyes said everything. This wasn't the first time he'd been underestimated, but this time would be different. Without another word, she handed back the phone and ID. "You may proceed," she said stiffly. He nodded. "Thank you." But the damage was already done. Before we dive back into the story, I've got a quick favor to ask. I'm working toward a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and every single one counts. It would mean the world if you'd hit that subscribe button. All right, back to the story. The cabin of FalconAir's first class was pristine. Cream leather seats, ambient lighting, and enough legroom to stretch out a dream. It was a quiet, almost reverent space. A sanctuary at 35,000 feet. Half the seats were empty, the rest occupied by business travelers nose-deep in spreadsheets, or sipping sparkling water like it was aged scotch. Tiger stepped in without a word, boarding pass in hand. He moved with ease, finding his seat, 1A, right by the window. He placed his backpack gently in the overhead compartment, took his seat, and exhaled. The noise of the airport faded behind him, but peace is a fragile thing. From the galley, a flight attendant emerged, tall, immaculate, with a clipboard pressed tightly to her side. She paused when she saw him. Her eyes flicked to the seating chart, then back to him. A whisper to another flight attendant. A nod. Moments later, she approached, crouching slightly by his seat like she was dealing with a lost child. "Excuse me, sir," she said with forced warmth. "This section is reserved for premium travelers only." Tiger looked up, puzzled. "Yes, I know. This is my seat, 1A. She offered a tight smile. "Are you sure? May I see your boarding pass?" Without frustration, he handed it over. Her eyes scanned the details. A moment of silence passed, but not understanding, disbelief. Her lips pressed into a line. "Just one moment," she said, standing. This time she walked to a supervisor near the curtain separating first class from business. Another whisper. More glances in his direction. Their expression said it all. "He doesn't look like he belongs." She returned, her tone firmer now. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your assigned seat in economy." Tiger blinked slowly. His voice was calm. "This is my assigned seat." A beat of silence. "It's probably a mix-up," she offered. "It happens sometimes." He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. But something had shifted in the air, because what they didn't know, what they were about to find out, was that the man they were dismissing didn't just fly with FalconAir, he owned it. The low murmur of first class had shifted. What was once a calm, hushed atmosphere became laced with sharp-edged curiosity. Whispers floated through the cabin like static electricity, unseen but crackling with energy. A man in a tailored gray suit leaned sideways in his seat, eyes narrowed. "Is that Tiger Woods?" he muttered to the woman beside him, barely above a whisper. She scoffed, her voice coated with cynicism. "No way. Tiger wouldn't fly commercial? Probably just some look-alike. They all wear hats like that." Another passenger across the aisle pulled out their phone, subtly angling the camera towards seat 1A. The lens caught Tiger sitting upright, composed, but clearly cornered. He wasn't hiding, just choosing not to escalate. Meanwhile, the flight attendant stood like a statue beside him, arms crossed, waiting for compliance. "Sir," she said again, this time sharper, "we need to resolve this before we can close the doors. Please move." Tiger's expression didn't change, but his eyes said everything. A lifetime of judgment. A lifetime of being mistaken for less than he was, even after becoming more than anyone ever thought he could be. He stood slowly. No protest, no sarcasm, just quiet dignity. He reached for his bag in the overhead compartment as conversations around him dipped into silence. Some passengers watched with awkward sympathy. Others didn't look at all. One woman shifted uncomfortably in her seat, whispering to her husband. He didn't even argue. That was odd. But it wasn't odd. It was familiar. The kind of quiet that comes when you've been here before, when you know your value, but choose not to display it. As Tiger stepped past the curtain toward the economy cabin, no one clapped, no one apologized. The flight attendant turned, expression blank, her clipboard held like a badge. The man who built a legacy on precision, power, and patience just got dismissed like he was no one. But the story wasn't over. It was only beginning. The curtain snapped shut behind him like a final insult. Tiger Woods, 15-time major champion, billionaire icon, walked down the narrow aisle of FalconAir's economy cabin with a carry-on in one hand and his pride in the other. He moved past rows of humming passengers who had no idea what had just happened up front. No idea that the most recognizable athlete on the planet had been mistaken for a trespasser in his own seat. Some recognized him, some didn't. One woman halfway through the cabin tilted her phone up as he passed, eyebrows raised. "Yo, I think that's Tiger Woods," she whispered, already opening Instagram Live. The caption she typed, "Rich guy thinks he's famous or something." She hit record just in time to catch Tiger sliding into a middle seat, row 18, wedged between a snoring businessman and a teenage boy with AirPods. He didn't flinch, didn't look at the camera, didn't react. Because Tiger wasn't here to prove a point. Not yet. He sat back, his eyes scanning the seat back in front of him. The tiny tray table latched shut, the faint smell of recirculated air and coffee creamer settling around him like a fog. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was quiet, surgical, a slow stripping of status, one indifference at a time. Flight attendants passed him like he didn't exist. A child 2 rows up peeked between seats and whispered to her mom, "Is that someone famous?" The mom shrugged. "Doubt it. Famous people don't sit back here." But Tiger sat there anyway. Not out of weakness, out of patience. Because while others measured status by seat numbers and assumptions, he knew better. He could have corrected them, could have ended the confusion with 2 words and a call, but he didn't. Because sometimes silence holds more power than shouting ever could. And when the truth finally took flight, it would land harder than any of them were ready for. The further Tiger sank into his middle seat, the louder the whispers became, not in volume, but in velocity. Row 18 was no longer anonymous. Phones tilted, eyes darted. A teenager 2 rows back mouthed to his friend, "Dude, that is him." Screens lit up as passengers pulled up Google, Instagram, anything to confirm what their instincts already screamed. A man in 22D leaned forward. "Sir, I just wanted to say, big fan," he offered awkwardly, as if that might undo the insult already done. Tiger nodded politely. No smile, no words. The woman who live-streamed the moment earlier refreshed her feed. 30K views. Then 50K. The comments were rolling in. "Is that Tiger? No way they just kicked him out of first class. Wait, he's flying economy?" A quiet tension hummed through the cabin, almost reverent now. Not everyone knew what was happening, but enough did. Flight attendants moved faster, eyes flicking nervously toward row 18. One offered him water with a forced smile. He declined. The humiliation had mutated. No longer just quiet shame, but an unraveling spectacle. But Tiger didn't shift, didn't check his phone. Because while the cabin gossiped about what had happened, he was already thinking about what would. And it wasn't going to be subtle. Captain Marcus Lynn had seen a lot from 35,000 feet, but what he saw on the crew tablet made him pause, mid-sip of his coffee. Passenger discrepancy, it read. Attached was a name. Eldrick T. Woods. His eyes widened. No. Not possible. But then again, why not? He turned to his co-pilot. "I need 5 minutes on web," he said, already unbuckling. A quick call to FalconAir's executive desk confirmed it. Not only was Tiger Woods on board, he was the new majority stakeholder, and he'd just been sent to economy. Captain Lynn took a deep breath, composed his thoughts, and stood, not as a pilot now, but as a man representing a legacy airline that had just insulted its owner. He spoke calmly into the intercom, not protocol, not rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." The words rippled forward like a quiet drum roll. A storm was coming, but not one of anger, one of truth and respect, long overdue. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the plane leveled off at cruising altitude. Conversations buzzed softly over the drone of engines, and the tension from earlier seemed to dissolve, at least on the surface, until the intercom clicked. A familiar voice came over the speakers, confident, calm. It wasn't the usual recorded welcome message. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We'd like to thank you for choosing FalconAir for your travels today, and we're especially honored to have a very special guest on board." Heads turned, brows furrowed. Even Tiger looked up, slightly puzzled. A pause, then footsteps approached from the cockpit. Captain Marcus Lynn, a seasoned pilot with silver at his temples and the grounded energy of a man who'd flown presidents and dignitaries alike, stepped into the first-class aisle. He wasn't holding a clipboard. He wasn't smiling for show. He was here with purpose. He walked past the curtain and into economy, scanning the rows until he stopped at seat 18B. "Mr. Woods," the captain said with unmistakable warmth, "it's an honor to have the new majority owner of FalconAir with us." Silence snapped. Then a wave of audible gasps rippled through the cabin. Whispers exploded like sparks on dry tinder. "Wait, what? Did he say owner?" The woman with the live stream fumbled with her phone. Oh my God, that was Tiger Woods. Row by row, heads turned, mouths fell open. And in first class, the flight attendant from earlier, clipboard still in hand, stood frozen, pale, eyes wide. The man she'd escorted out of 1A now held the very keys to the airline. Tiger stood slowly, nodding politely to the captain. No gloating, no revenge in his tone. Just quiet composure. The kind you earn after years of being underestimated, only to own the very thing you were once excluded from. He didn't need to say a word. The altitude wasn't the only thing dropping. So were jaws. The door to the first-class galley swung open with urgency, not grace. The flight supervisor stepped forward first, adjusting his blazer like it could somehow smooth over what had already been shattered. Behind him, the gate agent from LAX and both flight attendants followed, their faces painted with the kind of regret that arrives only after a very public mistake. They found Tiger back in first class now, seated in 1A again, but not because he demanded it, because someone finally realized he should have never left it. "Mr. Woods," the supervisor began, voice wavering, "please allow me to sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding earlier." The flight attendant, the same one who had questioned his boarding pass, his seat, and indirectly his worth, stood stiffly beside him, her hands folded in front of her, eyes down. Tiger looked up. Not angry, not smug, just steady. Another stepped in, the gate agent, the one who had scrutinized his ID like it didn't belong. "We're so sorry, Mr. Woods. Truly. We had no idea." He raised a hand, gently stopping her mid-sentence. "I'm not looking for apologies," he said, his voice low, clear, and sharp enough to cut through altitude. The room stilled. "I'm looking for change." Silence filled the cabin like fog, heavy, reflective, because it wasn't just about a seat or a title or even an airline. It was about the system that made someone like Tiger prove who he was in the first place. The gate agent nodded slowly, her eyes glassy. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "Understood." Tiger nodded once, then turned back toward the window, watching the clouds drift below. He wasn't here for revenge. He was here to elevate the standard. The supervisor backed away quietly, whispering instructions to the others. As they retreated down the aisle, passengers watched, not out of curiosity anymore, but with a different kind of respect. Not because he was famous, but because he'd just turned humiliation into a masterclass in grace. And somewhere, 35,000 feet above assumptions, the winds had started to shift. The wheels of FalconAir Flight 276 touched down with a soft thud, the runway lights streaking past like comets in the night. The cabin gave a collective exhale as the jet slowed, the hum of engines easing into a calm coast. But inside, the real turbulence had already happened. As the plane taxied to the gate, Tiger remained quiet. No press statements, no dramatic walk-off, just a man who had been wronged and knew exactly what to do next. The moment they reached the terminal, a company liaison rushed aboard, holding a phone and sweat on his brow. "Mr. Woods," he said breathlessly, "the executive team is standing by for your statement." Tiger looked at him, then handed over a single-page memo he'd written somewhere over Colorado. Mandatory training. company-wide, bias awareness, cultural competency, professionalism protocols, non-negotiable, immediate. The liaison nodded as he scanned it. His throat bobbed with a nervous swallow. Understood, sir. Meanwhile, back in the digital world, the moment had already gone viral. The live-streamed clip hit 1 million views in under 2 hours. Tiger Woods kicked out of first class, then buys the airline. The comment section was on fire. And they thought he didn't belong? Legendary response. From middle seat to majority seat, respect. Even his rivals are clapping for this one. Celebrities posted their support. Athletes reposted the video. Even a few airline competitors chimed in, some with shade, others with admiration. It wasn't just a headline anymore. It was a movement. A shift in the conversation about how people are seen and unseen in spaces they've already earned a place in. Tiger didn't tweet, didn't post. He just let the truth fly on its own. And as the door of the plane opened and he stepped back onto solid ground, there was no mic drop, just footsteps. Calm, grounded, unbothered. Because sometimes the loudest statement is one that doesn't need to be shouted. The terminal looked the same. Polished floors, recycled air, the constant murmur of boarding calls echoing off glass walls. But something had changed. Months had passed since that flight, since a name became a lesson, since a silent humiliation turned into an industry-wide reckoning. Now the FalconAir gate displays glowed with a new slogan, "Respect flies first." It was printed on boarding passes, stamped on uniforms, whispered in training seminars that started with a single story and turned into a movement. A flight to Miami prepared for boarding. Gate 1, first-class passengers only. The gate agent looked up from her tablet and froze for half a second. Tiger Woods stood there. Same calm eyes, same quiet walk. No entourage, no announcement. Just him. But this time there were no skeptical glances, no whispered doubts, no extra ID checks, just a smile. "Mr. Woods," the agent said, offering her hand with genuine warmth. "Welcome back. We're honored to have you with us." He shook it, nodding once. "Thank you." As he stepped onto the jet bridge, other passengers took notice. Not with confusion or side eyes, but with respect. A couple even clapped quietly, not for a celebrity, but for a man who changed the rules without ever breaking them. The same flight attendant from that fateful day? Gone. But in her place stood a new crew, trained, aware, professional, and more importantly, human. Tiger took his seat in 1A, again. He didn't need extra champagne. He didn't need the captain to make an announcement. He was already home. Out the window, the sun began to rise, gold light, breaking over the tarmac like a promise. And just before takeoff, as the engines powered up and the nose lifted into the sky, Tiger leaned back, closed his eyes, and smiled. Not because he'd won, but because he'd changed something that mattered. Because sometimes the best revenge is transformation. This story was intense, but the one waiting for you on the right, it's even more insane. Click it now. You won't believe what happens next.